Hello, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. Good afternoon. It is Norwich City back in action in the Championship after a week off for FA Cup duties against Birmingham City today in what is going to be a really interestingly poised Championship clash. And we have the team news for you. Norwich City line up this afternoon like this. Kovacic in goal. Fisher, McConville, Cordoba and Kruzene are the back four. Sam Field and Kenny McLean, the midfield two. Liam Gibbs retains his place on the right. Anis Ben Slimani back in at number 10 with Ali Ahmed on the left. And the goal machine that is Mo Toure starts up front for the Canaries. The subs bench is Grimshaw, Stacey Darling, Wright, Macoma, Marcondes, Mundell Smith, Springett and Chris Goran. So just to run through that for you again, Kovacic in goal, Fisher, Cordoba, Kruzene, the back four as we've become accustomed to. Field alongside Kenny McLean, Liam Gibbs on the right-hand side, Ahmed on the left-hand side with Anis Ben Slimani behind Mo Toure. And that is how the Canaries line up. And as is the nature of where they are at injury-wise, no Oscar Schwartau, who has joined what is a really growing list of injuries, isn't it? Let's be honest, in terms of where Norwich City currently find themselves. There's a little bit, I think, of kind of thoughts and feelings over who would play in that right-hand side position. And it is, as Philippe Clement went at Oxford in their last Championship game, Liam Gibbs that gets the nod. And I think anyone who would have seen that game, quite interesting. Norwich City now with Sam Field, with Kenny McLean, Kruzene, Cordoba, a lot of left-footers in the side. And if you looked at kind of their average positions over that game at Oxford, there was a lot of left-sidedness to them, which was, really interesting to see how that unfolded and how much joy they got down that left-hand side as well, particularly in that first half. So it's going to be interesting to see what Liam Gibbs can offer in a home game where Norwich City will certainly hope to have maybe a little bit of, quite a bit more control than they have done in previous games. That is the Norwich City lineup. We'll get that for you along the bottom of the screen. Paris Macoma, who was really one of the stars of the shows last weekend. Really impressive in the way that he played. Makes the bench, probably not quite fit enough at the moment to play from the off, and a rare bench appearance for Emi Marcondes, which is something that we've not become too accustomed to in recent weeks, with him missing out on squads altogether. And of course he, as we reported, had the opportunity to leave the club in January and probably go to a Bundesliga 2 club. He didn't take that. He opted to stay at Norwich City. And I think this is his, we'll have to have a look in a moment, but this is his first matchday squad for a significant period of time. So there it is. Hopefully now scrolling along the bottom of your screen, we'll bring Paddy in a moment to get his thoughts and reflections on it. He's on his way, I can assure you. I can see him if I turn to my left. So, that's Liam Gibbs on the right-hand side this afternoon, which is an interesting one. Let me pull this across and we can bring Paddy in to get his thoughts and perspective on the team news. There we go. Probably to be expected. It felt like, Paddy, the biggest debate was over who would start on that right-hand side. Obviously, with Oscar Schwartau ruled out for a month with that hamstring complaint. Liam Gibbs gets the nod again.
Yeah, well, I was debating with somebody else this morning, really, where does he go with that? I mean, Tony Springett obviously sprung to mind, no pun intended, but he likes Gibbs, I think. I think he sees something in him, and zoom out his Norwich career, really. I don't think for me is necessarily about technically has he got what's needed at this level. It's finding a position for him, and it's crucially the fitness issues, which he's not alone, but he's never had. You probably have to go and do some research and analysis, but when has he really had a consistent block of fitness that would allow him to be game after game in contention? I think when he's on the pitch, I thought he was good at Oxford, actually, now I think about it. And maybe that's what's got him the nod today in terms of Clement's mind. And, it's good that, maybe it underlines where they are now, that Marcondes, who hasn't gone anywhere near a squad for probably a thick end of a month and could have probably gone in January, he's got to go on the bench today, as does Mundell Smith. So they are really down to the bare bones now. And in that context, right-hand side, there wasn't many other options. So whether Liam Gibbs is a natural right-sided attacker, it'll be interesting, the dynamic with Fisher, how those two dovetail. Is it more he cuts inside and Fisher goes on the overlap? Let's see how that one plays out. But for me, Ali Ahmed is a nailed on now in those two wide positions for this little period of games without Schwartau, Jurasek, Papagiallo for a bit longer. But that other slot is open and is up for grabs. No Makama as well, who's played on that side as well at points this season. So really, Liam Gibbs, there is a window of opportunity for him today. if he grabs it, then he might get a little run in the side.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, he hasn't had a run inside. He hasn't had a run inside in one position either. It feels like he's played all over the place. I go back to those David Wagner times where he plays a striker for periods of that. We've seen him as a number 6, as a number 8. We've seen him out wide. I think we've seen him as a fullback on occasion as well. So kind of feels like there's still a journey of discovery about where best he is suited. Maybe not in terms of playing, because I think we all feel that's probably in the middle of midfield, but maybe where best he can have an impact in this team at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever he's done any media, he seems to suggest that for him it's more central areas. He sees it maybe in more the 6 role. I think his best, if I think about it now, it's probably that Dean Smith early part of when he was trusting him in the central areas 6/8, and obviously that was pre a lot of injuries, and maybe that's just took something off his game. But he felt like he had that drive and that dynamism, and technically he's always struck me as pretty good on the ball. He takes good care of it. So he doesn't naturally fill me with. He is a wide player in a 3. Neither does Tony Springett, if I'm honest. I think we've seen enough now that he will give you a certain part of that craft, but he's not going to take you in a progressive sense further forward. I don't think, if we're being brutally honest with Tony Springett. And Liam Gibbs is probably in the same bracket for me, unless he can now show in what feels like a spell of games that he's going to get an opportunity if he performs. That maybe he can be an option. I don't think we thought necessarily Jacob Wright was a 10, and he might not actually be a 10, or Schwartau for that matter, but under Clement, they have been given those opportunities. Clement said about 7 days ago, I will shock you. I've done that at all my other clubs. I will play players in positions where you stop and you think and go, what's that all about? I wouldn't necessarily say Liam Gibbs on the right of a 3 is a shock, but I don't think too many would have felt, and he's coming through, that would be a natural position, but needs must, and let's see how he goes, as I say, in tandem with Fisher, which is the key to it. I think there's a nice balance now on the other side with Krizeni and with Ali Ahmed. If they can replicate that on this side, that's going to be key, because you're going to need to give Birmingham something to think about. The West Brom game, a lot of it was down that left-hand side, Mahoma and Ali Ahmed, and there wasn't too much happening on the right-hand side. I think Birmingham are clearly a better side than West Brom. They might come and try and make it difficult, as Blackburn did here in terms of structurally, and look to hit on transition. If that is the case, Norwich need that threat on both flanks. If they just continue to go down the left-hand side, that'll be very easy to counteract, I would have thought, from a Birmingham point of view. Yeah,
just to answer this question on Force, and he's back in training now, isn't he? But I think naturally, because of the nature of the injuries that he's had, Clement said a couple of weeks ago, it would be about building him up and getting him to a level where he's perhaps a little bit more robust to be able to cope with the Championship and the rigours of the Championship. So clearly a little bit of patience being taken over him. Vladan Kovacevic back in the side, Paddy, after missing the Oxford and West Brom games. Obviously, that slight thigh injury. Was there ever any doubt or conversation to be had about him not returning as number 1?
Well, not for me, no, but Clement in his radio interview yesterday, it was almost suggesting that Grimshaw will get games between now and the run-in. I find that a little bit strange, because Kovacevic has been his number 1 thus far. Didn't have a huge amount to do at Oxford in terms of shot stopping. 1 or 2 nervy moments against West Brom, but again, didn't have a huge amount to do. And, maybe he has pushed himself into a little bit more closer to Kovacevic. But I think if both are fit, both are available, for me, he's your number 1, has been from the start of the season. So I didn't really see that as a debate, if I'm honest, that if he's fit and he's available, you get him back in this side. Because also for me, it's the understanding with the back four, particularly now there's a settled back four with Fisher, Cordoba, McConville and Krizeni. I think to have the keeper behind him who is, more often than not, that 5, that just gives them that reassurance, as a back 5. Whereas with Grimshaw, obviously, you're dropping a new keeper in there. It does cause a degree of disruption. He didn't do anything wrong for me in those 2 games, but much like Kenny McLean comes back in today, much like Mo Torre comes back in, there seem to me a lot of straightforward selection calls for me. Even Cordoba coming back in, I don't think Darling, for me, did anywhere near enough to feel that he could be a rival to the McConville-Cordoba central defensive pairing that we're seeing blossom in the last few games. So, yeah, for me, pretty straightforward call. No, but to reiterate, Clement did seem to indicate that in Grimshaw, he feels he maybe has pushed his claims, and there is a little bit more of a level of competition between those 2 keepers. But I think he's still got a little bit of a way to go before we talk about him as a serious rival to Kovacevic.
Yeah, and I think what I would say as well is in those two games that he played, West Brom and Oxford, didn't really feel like he was tested a huge amount, if I'm being honest, in terms of pure shots and saves, which is a good thing. Ultimately, it means Norwich's defence did their job, but I think in terms of that pure sort of shot-stopping pedigree, we didn't really see that over the two games. We did see some excellent distribution, namely at Oxford, where there was a long ball over the top that Toure ran onto, but maybe not those shot-stopping qualities that you feel probably would be required to really push Vladan Kovacevic. Let's bring you the Birmingham 11. They've made 3 changes to their team that lost narrowly on penalty to Leeds in the FA Cup last weekend. It's Beadle in goal, Asai Samuel, Clara, Panzo and Wagner as their back 4, Tomoki and John Solis as their midfield 2, Carlos Vicente and Damari Gray on either flank, with Marvin Dutsch and August Plisk, who's a Danish signing, that arrived in January. Leads the line for them. Their subs bench also led Newman Robinson, Tommy Doyle, Patrick Roberts, Kanya Osman, and Jay Stansfield on the bench as well, which is an interesting one. You tend to associate him as being one of the leading figures in this Birmingham team from afar, but he is on the bench this afternoon. We'll come back to Birmingham in just a moment. But Paddy, in terms of that, I guess attacking makeup, Toure clearly scoring a lot of goals. Ahmed, as you say, probably the only natural wide option they've got at the moment, but also a very capable one based on what we've seen in Anis Ben Slimani, who, despite Paris Macoma maybe stealing some of the headlines last week, came on and made a real impact. Feels quite settled now, that free of this attacking lineup that Norwich City have built at the moment.
But again, the degree of needs must, isn't there, Connor, with that? I mean, I don't necessarily get the vibe that he feels Chris Gordon is his number 9 starter, not in the league anyway. So, no Makama, certain American nearly out the door, and no major other alternatives to Mo Toure, if we're being honest, in that type of profile of player that he obviously values. They went for that's for who in the January window. Again, very similar, robust, powerful. Maybe not as mobile as Toure from the clips I've seen, but nevertheless in that type of template, and that is Mo Toure in this group. So Slimani, couldn't argue that he doesn't retain his place now with what he's producing, but we've touched on him now, with Mahoma now just in the wings, and I think showed enough promise against West Brom that Slimani knows he can't really afford to drop his levels. That's what Clement wants all round the squad, and as you said yesterday, certain parts of the squad, yes, they have that. Others, number 9 for me, stand out defensively, maybe in full-back areas. And obviously now on the right-hand side of the 3, they simply don't have that. They don't have the bodies available. They don't have that level of competition, and that is a concern for me. That's the only thing I can see that can check the momentum that is now building under Clement. That isn't to say that they won't lose a game. They might draw a game because that's the nature of the Championship. But in terms of what could derail Norwich for me between now and the end of the season, it isn't anything other than the racking up of these injuries. And Schwartau now, he's a big blow, because we saw here against Blackburn last time out in the league, that was a game that was meandering to a draw. Neither side were doing enough. He came on, first thought, get the ball, progressive, drive forward, created 2 of the goals that ultimately decided that game. They don't have him for the foreseeable. And you think you get down to the point, I've made the point in my first remarks, you look at that bench and Mundell Smith and Springett and even Marcondes, none of those, I think, strike me as real game-changing options. So that's why there's such a reliance on Mo Toure, primarily in that attacking area, but also Ali Ahmed and Anis Ben Slimani. I think those 3, if this progress is going to continue in the very, very short term with all these injuries, it's probably those 3 who are going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the creative output.
Yep, I would agree. Before we come on to the game itself, Paddy, obviously we've got to speak about Josh Sargent, haven't we? And that saga coming to a conclusion, which feels like now it is relatively imminent, I would say. Clearly, he's flown over to Canada to put the finishing touches on a deal that is going to be worth an initial 17 million to Norwich, potentially with add-ons taking that over 20. I think hard not to look at that deal in terms of finances and feel that Norwich have done well to get that much money for a player who clearly has not played for a while, but equally clearly doesn't want to be here, quite frankly.
No, doesn't want to be here. No, wants to go home, supposedly, so with his young family. And, but what a piece of business. They come in at 13 in early December. No, not going to trade at that, irrespective of whatever games him and his camp want to play. we roll it on 2 months and they're getting 17 guaranteed up front. That difference is more than paid for Motore. So that's all you need to know, because Motore is not a £2.6 million addition if he continues in the vein he is. And that is a direct result of the Norwich approach. Atanasio's here today. He set the tone. Clement was fully behind him. Ben Napper fully on the same page. And, despite one or two shenanigans from maybe people in and around his camp, it didn't have the desired effect, and Toronto have to stomp up, and 17 guaranteed with, as it's been told to me, achievable add-ons to take it north of 20 million. It was only around 22 million in the summer. When he could have gone to Wolfsburg, he opted not to go. So I think that's, yet again, I know he's very maligned, but you have to, in this area, player trading, Ben Napper, faultless. John Rowe, Adamida, Kamara, Gabi Zara, and Borja Sainz. You cannot argue that he's got top dollar for all those players. And yet again, for me, a player who is proven at Championship level, but not beyond. He certainly wasn't proven at Premier League level. He hasn't done it for his country, so I think that represents excellent business. And let's hope if Toure again shows what he's shown in the first 3 or 4 games, they've already got a ready replacement, and we know that they tried to get Who in the summer. I'm pretty sure come this summer, in January just gone, this coming summer, if it's not Who, they will again go for a big summer striker signing. So, yeah, hat tip to everybody at that football club who've handled this pretty faultlessly, I would suggest. Aided, of course, by Makama first coming in, scoring the goals. Now Toure. That made things a lot easier, I guess, from Norwich's side of the equation, that the team was continuing to move forward. The strikers were continuing to score goals. That lessened him and his camp's bargaining position, and Toronto's for that matter. But nevertheless, not a situation I think that was handled the best from his side. But, he will get his wish, barring any 11th hour issue. And let's see how he does in the rest of his career. But for me, legacy-wise, he shredded it.
Yeah, I would agree. A couple of points on that I would make. I think probably Norwich are in a stronger position because of that change in ownership recently. I think if we were maybe in a former world, would they have been in a position to turn down first, second bids for a player? Probably not. The fact that, as you say, that alignment was there, it allowed them to be all on the same page. I think you mentioned about the add-ons and whatnot. From our sort of understanding, is it's a pretty aggressive payment sort of schedule. So it's not one of these that extends over, they're going to get 17 million over 5 years. I think it's a really short window that they'll get the majority of that money in. That then allows them to attack the summer with aggression and to probably get off the mark early with that, and to line a few deals up. That you don't equally have the overhang of this deep into a championship season where it's still got to stay up, and that's before we maybe look up the table in a more optimistic fashion. So all of that I think is positive, and above all else, as you said, Paddy, vindication you suspect for their general approach and their hardline approach, and hopefully the message they've sent out to the rest of their squad and any players potentially in the future that feel of pulling a similar trick maybe have now been warned off taking such and their advisors, to be fair, walking a similar path to the one that Josh Sargent has done. So yeah, we're expecting that to get done in the coming days. He has flown to Toronto yesterday. There'll be a medical in due course, and obviously they start their MLS season away at Dallas. I think it is tomorrow, so he probably won't be playing in that, I think it's fair to say, but he wouldn't be surprised if it's done in and around that. So yeah, we'll obviously bring you confirmation as and when it arrives. To matters on the pitch though, Paddy, this feels like a really interesting test. When you think about the other ones that Norwich have had this month, Blackburn, West Brom, Oxford, obviously West Brom in the Cup, but teams that were kind of in and around them towards the bottom end of the table. Birmingham are in more of the middle of the table. I suspect Chris Davies hasn't fully written off the playoffs and a late push up there. Clearly on a very different story, a very interesting story. This feels like a very different test for Norwich City to kind of see whether under Philippe Clement, and of course, as you pointed out to him and as he pointed out yesterday, it's kind of a full circle moment, because it was this fixture in reverse that started his Norwich City reign as head coach.
Yeah, but as he said, Norwich are different, but he also feels, given the way Birmingham strengthened in the window that just went, they're better, stronger. So, yeah, I mean, it's a nice full circle moment, but I don't think it holds a huge amount of story in terms of what will unfold today. I think it is two vastly different teams. For me, the bigger issue is how Birmingham react to. I watched most of that Leeds Cup tie, obviously pertinent as Norwich have ended up with the winners, but they put a hell of, I mean, maybe that's why Stansfield's not in the 11 today, because he was everywhere that day. 120 minutes, heavy pitch, then the sort of psychological blow of losing on penalties, and you could see at the end of that game how much they'd put in and how much energy they'd expended. I know they've had a full week to recover physically, But I'm just intrigued to see what that's done for them psychologically a little bit, because they need to pick up the pace. They are in that pack of clubs just on the cusp of the playoffs, but they need to continue to pick up points. They can't really lose ground and have a little fallow period. So I don't think they can come here with any type of cup hangover. But I'm just interested to see what impact that does have, if any. And, you could argue they lost that game, albeit on penalties, but they're unbeaten, certainly in the league this year, and won their last 2 away in the league. So it is a different proposition to the Blackburns of this world, and Charlton more recently as well. Teams down the bottom end of the table. And for that reason, I think I'm going to go draw today, 2-2 for me.
Yeah, interesting. I could see that for sure. I think it's a really tough one to call, because you look at it, Birmingham haven't travelled well really this season. 15 points from 16, and that's only because they've won their last 2 against Oxford and Sheffield Wednesday, I think. So, but clearly that home form and some of the talent in that squad is very capable. And I think this will be a really tough test. I think Norwich might edge it 2-1, just in terms of the rhythm and the momentum and that ability to kind of find a way to win. I'm going to agree with Benny here, and maybe not the goal scorers, but a 2-1 scoreline, I think. But I could absolutely see a draw as well. And who knows? Big week for Norwich, really, because obviously Birmingham here today, Sheffield Wednesday in midweek, and then a trip to Leicester next Saturday. There's a potential there for points, and if they can get those points, then maybe we I know there's been plenty of fan chatter around playoffs and whether they can mount a late charge, but a decent points return this week probably really does extinguish that excitement and fuel that excitement and fan the flames of that optimism as well. So feels like a big one, this, and really intrigued to see how Norwich City cope with it. Pinkin.com is the place to go throughout the afternoon. We'll have all of the coverage, analysis and reaction to this game. Paddy will be speaking to Philippe Clement afterwards as well for his post-match reaction. You'll be able to watch all of that, read all of that across our channels this afternoon. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you again very soon.